All right, DJ, let's go.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. We're getting over a couple of small technical difficulties, but we are here. This is What's in It for the Black People Media and the show I Do, I Did, I Don't with Tasha. Happy Valentine's Day. Let me just say that if you are a person that's having some difficulty relationally right now, whether you're going through divorce, thinking about divorce, on the other side of divorce, happy Valentine's Day to you. And I want you to do something special for yourself today. We teach others how to treat us, how to love us. And so if we're not doing it for ourselves, then we can't expect others to do it. So do something nice for yourself today, whether it's buy nail polish for yourself. Buy yourself some flowers. I do that regularly because I love flowers and fresh flowers inside. Whether you are, whether you have money, much money or not, you can do a number of small things for yourself. So, like I said, buy yourself some nail polish. You can buy yourself some flowers. You can go to have a massage. You can get your nails done, your toes done. I actually did my nails today, which I don't do a whole lot. But treat yourself well. Teach yourself how to love yourself so that others can see how to love you. So happy Valentine's Day. I wish you all the best in this day. Good morning to all that are joining. I see Tiger Lily joining. I see Zena on. We have a special guest today, and we will be talking about some of the financial matters that accompany divorce. So when you think about divorcing, we're going to get into it because I lost a little bit of time up front, and I want to make sure you get all of this good knowledge. So when you think about divorcing up front, there are matters of property that you need to consider. And property can be the home that you live in, it can be the things that you have inside the home, but it can also be your financial instruments that you have for savings. So savings, checking accounts, savings accounts, your retirement accounts, as well as your pension. So we're going to talk today with an attorney who does this for a living, so understands exactly what we need to consider, understands exactly how these instruments work and the laws that are associated with them. So I'm going to introduce her, and she will be coming on with us in a moment, but her name is attorney Rena Felton. And let me just tell you a little bit about her because she's a badass. So attorney Rena Felton is an employee benefits attorney. She advises and assists employees with all aspects of health and welfare plans, qualified and non-qualified retirement plans, and executive compensation. Rina is a frequent speaker on employee benefits compliance issues. She holds a Juris Doctorate from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, Texas, and a Master of Laws in Employee Benefits from the John Marshall Law School in Chicago. She is licensed to practice in the states of Texas and Georgia, and has also contributed articles to the Syracuse Law Journal and the Family Law sections of the New York State Bar Association. Rena also previously served as an adjunct professor at the University of Houston Law Center and is a 2019 recipient of the National Black Lawyers Top 100 in Atlanta. So we have someone who is awesome, who knows what she's doing, knows what she's talking about, and she's going to advise us. So I want you guys to take a minute, because I know that there were a couple of difficulties at the top of the show. I want you to take a minute, share the broadcast, like the broadcast, follow the broadcast. I now have, you follow What's in It for the Black People Media, but additionally, I now have an I Do, I Did, I Don't Facebook page up. You can follow us there, but I want you to go ahead and make sure you're sharing this because there are folks that need this information. So good morning, Rena.
Good morning, Tasha. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you this morning?
I am doing well. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, here. I got something I need to work out here because I don't think the and that's oxymoronic to say hella cold. However, I think the cold is these sub-zero temperatures are messing with our Wi-Fi and everything. It's just it's interesting. I've had some issues like we're gonna get back to it. You all make sure again that you're sharing the broadcast. I know when you come up and it goes live, if we have an issue, then some of you might drop off and we need you to come back again. All right, so I know we got you holding for a minute, Attorney Rena, and I want you to take a moment.
Keep talking.
All right, Attorney Rena.
She's not here yet. You keep.
All right. I appreciate you all that are hanging in there with us while we work through this. I think it's too cold. All the wires and everything else because it's sub-zero in Chicago. But we're going to get through this. We're going to work through it. Hang in there with us. In the meantime, share so that other folks can join us. And I'll bring the guest on in just a minute. Again, for those who are just joining, this is I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's in It for the Black People Media. I feel like I need to slow down a little bit. I'm so excited because we have this guest who's going to share such knowledge with us. But we will get back to her in just a moment here. I am going to reset mine as well to make sure I'm on right live as well.
Can you hear her? Right. Go
Okay,
ahead.
we're just going to do a break for a minute while we work this out. You want to stay with us, share the broadcast, like both pages, What's in It for the Black People Media, and I Do, I Did, I Don't. Attorney Rena, hold on with us, and we're going to take a break, and we'll be back.
I think you two things I was waiting.
So
the sound is weird. Okay, that's one. I don't know. Did you hear something? But the sound is weird. It sounds like she's like talking to like the
look,
telephone.
it's like she's talking straight. Listen, you can hear her coming through
Right.
here.
I can't hear right. That's what I was saying. Like you was hearing her?
Yeah, we were
I
here.
can hear her.
But we can only hear
hear
her.
her in there.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Like,
Can we? Let's see if we can get her to talk. Can she hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
See what I'm saying?
This was her.
This, huh?
This was her. We were talking about it the other day.
So it will have to be an audio.
Yeah,
Hold
what
on.
audio at? The turn out.
Where our issue is. That's exactly where the issue is. The issue is it shouldn't say built in.
Because that's what it sounds like she's coming.
Of you, I can't get enough. It feels like I done OD on you, babe. I'm addicted for you. Can't stop loving, 'cause I can't get enough of you, babe. 'Cause I'm so addicted to you. This must be love. 'Cause I can't get enough of your love. I'm so addicted.
All right, we are back. We are back again. This is I Do, I Did, I Don't. This is Tasha on What's in It for the Black People Media. And I have attorney Rena Felton here. We are talking about financial matters and divorce. Specifically, we're talking about quadros. What is a quadro? A quadro is a qualified domestic relations order, and you use it in certain cases, and she's going to tell us all about that. So Attorney Rena Felton will bring you on in just a moment. And as we think about financial matters, again, those are matters of property that are related, that you hold together in marriage. So it can be your real estate property and interest. It can be just physical things that you own, such as furniture or collectibles or anything like that. And it also, property is also considered by the court any financial holdings that you have. So checking accounts, saving accounts, retirement accounts, as well as pension accounts. So we're focusing only on the piece around retirement and pension accounts because those are the pieces that matter for a qualified domestic relations order or a quadro. So I'll use that for short. Again, thank you all for hanging in there with us through some technical difficulties. If you would, I really appreciate you sharing the broadcast and liking the page. I Do, I Did, I Don't is now a Facebook page. You can also like What's in It for the Black People Media. All right, so we're getting her loaded up here, and we will be live in just a minute to talk through this. And Attorney Rena, I know that you can hear me. I'll get your split screen up in just a second. Okay, it looks like we'll get her in a second, and she might have walked away for just a moment while we're getting started and working through some of the issues. But there's good information, so hang on. Like I said, make sure that you're here, that you're hanging in there with us, because we have a lot to share, and I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. The reason, again, that I even do this show is because I walked through a divorce and was very ignorant about the process. I had not planned for divorce, hadn't thought that it would happen. And so I knew nothing about the process. I knew nothing about the legal process. I knew nothing about the financial considerations. I knew nothing about getting a lawyer, working with a lawyer, managing a lawyer. And so all of these things are so important for you to be equipped with. And you're walking through this while you're also walking through managing your emotions, because it's a highly emotional time. It's a very difficult time. And if you don't know these things, you will be taken to the court. So I want to make sure that when I was walking through my divorce, I think things would have gone so much better. I would have felt a lot more empowered. I would have had the information that I need, and I could have walked in that and done that from a different place. So I don't want you to have all those hard knocks and have all of that difficulty as well. If it can be shared with you, then I want to make sure that we do that and share that information so that you're better equipped for the process. And this is not just for those who are walking through the divorce currently or thinking about it, but some of the things we'll talk about are great for planning if you're even planning on being married, so that you have the ability to have things go well for you if something doesn't go well in the relationship. So Attorney Rina is on with us now. I think you can all see her. Thank you so much for hanging in there. I apologize that we've had some technical difficulties this morning, but these sub-zero temperatures are messing with our equipment in here. We are ready to start talking through a quadro. And so we're going to jump right in there. So I've already introduced you to the listeners, and I do want you to start with us with just basic knowledge. I had never heard of a quadro before. So what is it? Why do you need it? What is it for? Who does it? Let's talk all of that.
Absolutely. So Quadro, which really stands for a Qualified Domestic Relations Order, is essentially a court order, and it divides out any retirement or, as you said earlier, pension benefits that an ex-spouse may have or a spouse may have. And so basically, essentially, when you get a divorce, a quadro will split out the benefits. It tells how the benefits will be split out among the parties. Essentially, what a lot of people don't recognize is that retirement savings, like your 401k savings plans, or if you have a pension plan, when you are married, your spouse has a property right in those benefits. And so it should follow that once parties actually divorce, then that property right still stays with the ex-spouse.
So
and so...
Can I ask you a quick question? Because the
Sure.
listeners are going to ask questions, and listeners, if you do have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat related to this, and we can try to get to some of those. But you said that your spouse has rights to it, and so can you explain that just a little bit more in terms of your spouse's rights? So if I had a pension or a 401k or IRA or whatever it was, and a retirement savings instrument, if I had that before marriage and then got married, they have right to all of it or part of it?
No, they only have right to a part of it, and we call it the marital portion. So it's a portion of the retirement savings that accumulated during the marriage. So what ends up happening is that when it's time for parties to split it out, parties can decide the percentage amount. So if a person started working for a company in, let's say, 1980, got married in 1990, and was divorced in 2000. Then upon a divorce, the ex-spouse would be entitled to 50% of the marital portion. So the marital portion goes from 1990 until 2000. So you don't get what was accumulated prior to the marriage, but the ex-spouse is only entitled to what was accumulated during the marriage, much like other property, that is acquired with two parties. And so you have your home. If you had a home that was bought before was married, then you only get a portion of the marital property. So that was accumulated during the marriage only.
Okay,
Works
so
the same
you're
way.
telling us then, in terms of property interest, even if I had it and it was mine before the marriage, that spouse can still have right to part of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is governed by federal law, mind you. And so these quadros are only valid for these private companies. Employer-sponsored plans is what we like to call them. So if you have a government plan, if you work for the government or the state or a teacher or a military, those are also, there's also a division of property, but it's not done by a quadro. The document that divides those properties out are by different instruments. And so that would be state mandated or, military mandated, or even, with the teachers associations, they have their own sets of rules. So what we're discussing today only applies to those private employer sponsored retirement plans. And that's governed by federal law. And there are specific requirements that have to be met as well. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Tasha. I'm sorry, did you ask a question? I can't hear you at all. It's very, no, I don't have any audio. I can't hear.
Okay, if you can, keep talking. We'll work it out here.
Okay, you're back now. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
and I do, and I actually want to give a disclaimer that I should have probably done at the beginning. I just wanted everyone to know, because I'm an attorney, I'm required to let you all know that this discussion today does not constitute legal advice. And so, if you have a quadro or are in need of a quadro, I would ask you to make sure that you consult your attorney, your family law attorney, or another employee benefits attorney.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So the question
Absolutely.
I was asking was around private employers. I wanted to make sure we clarify that. So basically,
Sure.
anybody that works for a company or an entity that is not the government, that is
Correct.
not the teachers union, because there's some specific roles, or not a state employee, you're considered a private employer. And the federal laws for quadros do apply to you if you're getting divorced.
That's correct. Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. So,
All right. All right. Keep on going.
and so basically, if you guys are thinking about planning, as Tasha said earlier, if you're thinking about planning, you want to make sure that you do take into consideration your pension plan and your 401k savings plan. Because as we mentioned before, there is a property right in the ex-spouse, or we're going to call them alternate payees, because that's what they're called under the federal law. And so essentially, as soon as you get married, unless your spouse actually signs off and says that they don't want a part of it, you can't make any changes or do anything with that money if you have a spouse, because your spouse has a property right in it. And so when you get a divorce, it's very important that the parties actually talk about what's to become of this property, because everything is still negotiable, even though the law says that there is a property right in an ex-spouse, but everything's negotiable at divorce. And so if you're willing to give up something in order to keep your 401k savings or your retirement or your pension plans, then that may be worth having a conversation. But just note that this is something that your ex-spouse can totally, and rightfully so, seek a marital portion of this property.
Okay, so that is helpful. We are talking to attorney Rena Felton on the show I Do, I Did, I Don't, on What's in It for the Black People Media. Please share the broadcast. Please share and like both pages, the What's in It for the Black People Media page, as well as the I Do, I Did, I Don't page. Attorney Rena Felton is talking with us about Quadros, or Qualified Domestic Relations Orders. These are orders that are the court issues when marital assets are being divided, and they are specifically related to retirement plan instruments and pension instruments. So that's all we're talking today really is about those two, and making sure that you have some information about those. All right, I want to have you continue. So you talked about the fact that there's a law that governs these. It is a federal law unless you are an employer of a state or of the government, or what was the other one? Like teachers unions have their own laws.
Yes, correct.
So if you're outside of those, then this Quadro process will be enacted for your divorce. Now, can you explain to us really now what happens at that point? So you're going through the divorce, you're working with your attorney. Does your attorney do the Quadro? Does a different person do the Quadro? Do you have to do it? How does that part work?
That's a really good question. And so most family attorneys do not, actually draft the Quadros, because they don't have the technical knowledge of employee benefits plans. And so usually they will farm that work out to a Quadro attorney or a Quadro business. There are plenty of those out there. And there are, a few attorneys that actually handles the Quadros. Either party can have it drafted. Oftentimes it's decided upon in the divorce decree who will be responsible for drafting the Quadro. Sometimes, there'll be a fee by the other attorney that you will have to pay in order to have the Quadro drafted. And then also, even though the court is the one that governs it, a step that cannot be overlooked is the actual plan administrator of the company for which you're seeking the Quadro. And what that means is that the plan administrator has to actually qualify the Quadro before any benefits can be paid out. And so as a practice pointer, some attorneys do submit the Quadro to the plan administrator for a pre-qualification. And once they sign off on it, then you can take the document to the court and have the judge to sign off on it, and then send the instrument to the company's plan administrator to go ahead and start administering the Quadro. So what's also very important is that most people don't realize that in the divorce decree, it should state that an ex-spouse is entitled to these retirement benefits or the pension benefits, and that a Quadro will be drafted. So it's really important that the family law attorney actually puts that in the divorce decree information, because, that's something that the plan administrator of the company will actually need to see in order to validate that, there is supposed to be a Quadro coming. Because like I said, there are instances where parties will agree to say, hey, instead of you taking a portion of my Quadro, or taking a portion of my pension or retirement, I will go ahead and give you the house and I don't want it. So it's a point of negotiation, but it does need to be actually, so stated in the divorce decree. And sometimes you do have really good family law attorneys who are, who've been doing, family law for so long. And so they're aware of the Quadro rules. And what they'll do is actually put the Quadro language in the divorce decree as well. Okay. So there are many ways to do it, but as long as it's been signed off by a judge and approved by the plan administrator of the company, then it's going to be considered a valid qualified domestic relations order.
Okay, so the Quadro basically tells the company then how to split the retirement savings or the pension plan amongst the two parties in divorce. And once
That's
the
correct.
company has signed off that, yes, this is a valid and qualified Quadro, then they can administer that. So what that means then is once someone gets to retirement age, then they know how they are supposed to split the funds between the two parties,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And sometimes, they don't have to wait until, what's called the normal retirement age. If it's allowed for them to retire early, then it can be split out a little bit earlier as well. It really depends on what the terms of the company actually provides.
Okay, so let's go back for a second. So if I have a retirement plan and my spouse has a retirement plan and we're divorcing, is there one Quadro that tells us what to do for both and how we're going to split those? Are there automatically two if both of us carry retirements? How do you move through and work through that piece when you're thinking about your retirement funds? Clearly you can decide we're both going to keep our retirements and it's not a problem. We've got about the same amount of money. But if one has 3 times as much in their retirement as the other, and one has a pension plan and the other doesn't, how does that get handled then?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it comes up a lot because, let's face it, in this day and age, almost everyone has a 401k plan or some kind of pension plan. And so, yes. But because they're two companies, essentially what normally happens is that there are 2 separate Quadros prepared. And even in the event of one person having a 401k plan and a pension plan, you still need a separate Quadro for each plan. Okay. So typically things are separated out, yes. But then, like you said, if someone has 3 times more, in their savings plan than the other ex-spouse, then you could have one Quadro that kind of offsets, that amount. So instead of the lesser person, giving a portion of theirs, what generally happens is that you'll say, okay, we'll have this one Quadro. You're entitled to 50% minus what I would have been getting from your Quadro, because it doesn't make sense to draft 2 different Quadros, especially if it's something that's small. So normally what they'll do is just make sure that they just subtract out the lesser amount and reduce the lower earning spouse's amount that they would normally get. So that can be done with just one Quadro.
Okay, that makes sense. So we're talking with attorney Rena Felton about one of the financial instruments that is in order in divorce called a Quadro, a qualified domestic relations order that handles how your retirement savings or your pension savings are split amongst the party, because there is a marital interest in that you acquire during the period of marriage. And so if you're married for 10 years, then that 10 years of earnings that is in your 401k or your pension plan, the spouse has a right to that. And I know for some people you're like, what? I'm the person working, I'm doing the hard work. But yes, that is the law. The spouse has a right to that marital portion only. And so she's talking to us about how the instrument works. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to those questions. But it's a great topic because it's something I never would have known about. And I think most people, if you've studied it in law, you know about it. Or if you have gone through a divorce, you know about it. Otherwise, it's not something that you ever think about. So I'm thinking about right now, Attorney Rena, on the front end of this, right? Mm-hmm. Could you have a prenup, let's say, that says you don't get any of my retirement, any of my pension savings that even acquires through the marriage? Are you allowed to do something like that?
So that's a tricky question because prenups are, governed by state. And so typically, even though you wouldn't ordinarily be able to have, that's really rare. So I don't want to go into, because it's very nuanced, right? But what I will say is this, when a person, has a retirement savings account, whether it's 401k, whether it's pension plan, you can always at any point get your spouse to sign off on and relinquish their rights. So you don't necessarily need to have a prenup to do that, because every 401k plan that's out there will give the spouse, even before they become an ex-spouse, they can relinquish their rights, because essentially a right can be given up by the person who holds the right. The person who doesn't hold the right has a responsibility to make this available. So when you have a right, only the person with the right can give up that right. And so, you don't necessarily need a prenup to do that, but you can actually do that with the plan itself, and they could sign off and relinquish their rights against any marital property they would have in the retirement benefits.
Okay, awesome. Well, that is good to know. I think we're going to keep going and through the end of the show. Instead of taking a break, since we had some issues up front, I want to make sure that we get to share as much knowledge as possible about this topic. And so when you talk about private employers, there are so many different employers out there. How does the attorney who is preparing the Quadro know what to do for each of those different employers? Because the pension plans, or I'm just going to think pension plans, they are administered differently depending on the employer. So what resource do you have available that helps you understand how to write it for each specific employer?
Sure. And so basically, you could contact the employer. They will sometimes provide the information that's necessary. Usually what I typically do is, once someone asks me for a Quadro, I will contact the company and, find out, what information do they require, because like you said, every employer is different. They have their own specific stipulations, and sometimes it can get frustrated because you're thinking, I'm just going by what the law says, and this is what the law says I need to put into these Quadros. But that's not necessarily the case. So every company has its own action plan. They have their own procedures, even in terms of, can you submit it to them for a pre-qualification, or some of them require it to be actually signed by the judge before they'll even take a look at it. So it's always going to be a good idea that, for the attorney to actually contact the different employers to request certain documentation. So they're going to probably request their SPD, which is a supplemental plan document. They'll request their Quadro procedures. And if possible, some companies actually do provide a sample Quadro that they, either will require that an attorney use, or, if people are drafting their own Quadros, which I don't recommend, but they will actually provide sample Quadros so that you could utilize. And some of the companies require that you use their sample Quadros, others do not. Others said that this is just a guide. This is, to help you to make sure that you're meeting our specific Quadro procedures. So that's the best way to kind of go about it, is to reach out to the companies themselves. And of course, the parties have to disclose who they're working for and, where, their pension plans lie. But, sometimes you have people who are dishonest. Maybe they had something accumulated during the marriage, and then they left the company and, and didn't say anything about it. So, but it'll definitely be up to the attorney to really find out this information.
Okay, so what are the big issues that you typically see when it comes to handling a Quadro?
The biggest issue that I've seen is that the terminology will be incorrect. So, you'll have incorrect information. And even if it's just a birth date could be wrong, a social security number can be wrong. So things like that are incorrect. Sometimes the amounts are incorrect. People aren't really paying attention to the Quadros. And so maybe it was meant to be 50%, but somebody decided to put 25%. Could be a mistake and things like that. A lot of the other big thing is that a lot of times people don't want to use the sample Quadros provided by employers, even if they require it. And so if the employer rejects the Quadro, then, taking it to the judge to sign it does not mean anything. So just because it's signed by a judge doesn't mean that it's going to be accepted by the plan administrator of the employer. So that's a huge mistake. People are always they're always misinformed, thinking that, well, this has been signed by a judge. Well, that doesn't matter, because this is coming not from the judge. This is coming from the employer. So the employer ultimately has to approve that Quadro. And so if it's not approved, and this has happened time and time again, they'll go to the judge, get it signed, Send it to the employer for administration. The employer says, no, you're missing X, Y, and Z. Some of this information is wrong. And so we're rejecting it, and you need to correct these errors that we found. Or sometimes people will try to give a property right in an amount that they're not able to get. So if they weren't married, if they were married for 10 years, but they worked for 20 years, sometimes an AP, an alternate payee, will come in and try to get 50% of the whole thing. So, so that's something that will definitely get rejected by the company because they don't have a marital right in that. And the other thing that you have to watch out for is with multiple marriages and divorces, sometimes there is another AP who has already assigned a portion of an ex-spouse's benefits. And so you have to make sure that you're not infringing on this ex-spouse's benefit because, you know, the current ex-spouse does not have a property right in any other ex-spouse's benefit. So those are a lot of what I've seen over the years.
That's really interesting. So I have a couple of questions that come out of that. So basically the Quadro is dividing and saying, all right, my ex-spouse gets this much of what I have in this financial instrument. The ex-spouse gets married, and then does his estate continue, in my case, his or her, does the ex-spouse's estate still have the ability to keep those, whatever has been issued by Quadro? And if they are remarried, then does that spouse then now get those funds?
No. Once it's been awarded to you, it is yours to keep. Or if it's been awarded to your ex-spouse, it's that ex-spouse's to keep. It does not matter if a spouse gets remarried. No one can ever infringe on an ex-spouse's property right. So once it's been awarded, that is your award and your award only. So the new spouse's property rights will begin at the point of that new marriage. So since yours happened before they were married, it's frozen in time essentially of when it's going to be split out at that time. The new spouse's property right does not start until that new marriage date. So there is no way possible for yours to ever be cut off by a new marriage.
Okay, so that makes sense. I get that part. Now, I'm going to give you a scenario. So in this scenario, I am giving part of my pension, let's say, to my ex-spouse. My ex-spouse remarries. And then he dies. Does his wife then get that part of the pension of my pension that he was owed?
So that's a really good question. So it really depends on how the Quadro is written, because you have to understand that most of the time the benefits are given for a person's lifetime. And so if a person's lifetime has ended, then essentially you would think that it would revert back to the other spouse, you know. Right. But, you know, that's not always the case. Sometimes it can go, you know, to a person's estate and things like that. But you have to be careful and make sure the Quadro is written in a way that's going to be more favorable to you. So if you give if you're giving up a portion of your pension and it's to your ex-spouse, you can have the Quadro written so that it will say that, okay, if he or she dies before they even begin to collect, then that money should come back into the account. But, you know, it just really depends on the company, because sometimes they say, well, this money will go to the estate. But those are very few and far between. But typically a Quadro is written to be paid over a person's lifetime. And that pension that you're getting from an ex-spouse, you can't assign that to, you know, a new future spouse. That person typically doesn't have the right into, you know, a Quadro awarded benefit per se.
Okay. And then, so then it would go to the estate, which then can you qualify in the Quadro that it go to your children, the children of that marriage? If the spouse dies, if the employer's plan says that it has to go to their estate, are you able to do something like that?
It really depends on what the terms of the plan are. So if the plan says that it can go to the estate, then it could go to the estate. If the plan says that it could go to the estate and then only the children will be able to get a portion of it. So most plans don't allow a new spouse to get a portion of benefits as a result of a quadro. So typically doesn't happen. But some plans will allow it to go to the estate, and then it can be divided among the children.
Okay.
But that will require careful planning and really, making sure that your attorney knows that those are some things that you wish to stipulate, because that's not going to be in the sample quadro, and it's not something that people think of, at the fore.
Okay. So what I heard you say then is you can stipulate in the quadro that your portion of whatever your savings were, retirement or pension savings that is assigned to the spouse, the marital portion that has been assigned to the former spouse, you can stipulate that if that spouse precedes you in death, then that money comes back into your account for you.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, if the plan allows it, though.
Okay. And it's the employer plan that has to allow it, because the law doesn't say that it has to be done one way or the other.
Correct.
Okay. So then here's the other question I have. Does my former spouse then get to draw on the monies before I retire? So if I have a pension plan and I decide that I'm not going to draw my pension plan until I'm 70, but there is a stipulation for an early retirement at 62, are they able to begin drawing before I start drawing?
Again, it'll depend on how the quadro is written, because, the short answer is yes, it is possible. If it is allowed by the terms of the quadro, and also the plan documents or the terms of the plan. And so essentially, especially when you have an ex-spouse that's older, if they're going to retire earlier, you can write the quadro so that they don't have to wait until, the participating spouse retires. And so it just depends on how it's written. So the same, on the flip side, even though, so you can make it so that what happens to your withdrawing of the benefits isn't contingent on the ex-spouse, isn't dependent on the spouse. So I guess the long and short of it is that, yes, you don't have to wait until you start, until you retire in order for your ex-spouse to start withdrawing the funds. The quadro has to be written that way in order to say it. So it's a shared interest quadro is what it's called, versus a separate interest quadro. And so if it's a shared interest, that means that you can do nothing until, the participating spouse actually starts to withdraw money. And if it's a separate interest, that means that you don't have to wait until that participant starts to withdraw money. You have the ability to withdraw at your retirement age.
And the plan determines that, not?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, the plan will determine that, and the quadro has to so state.
Awesome. Well, this has been extremely good information that is, I think, super helpful for those who are planning and going through divorce, to know that this is how how your assets get split when it comes to your retirement accounts, when it comes to your pension accounts. If you are work for a private employer, which essentially means that anyone who is employed by someone other than the government, other than the federal government, other than the state government, and in some cases the teachers unions, because they follow different rules. So we've been talking about qualified.
And also don't forget military, sorry.
And military. I was lumping them in with government, but that's a good point to draw out, because
Right.
there are a lot of, we have a lot of servicemen and women out there who are married and who will experience or have experienced divorce as well. So I really appreciate you sharing this information. We're coming toward the end of the show in about 5 minutes or so here. So I haven't seen any questions come across. I think people are taking the information in, but I do want you to tell us if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 takeaways for us that we should consider in the process of divorce, especially when it comes to dividing assets in these retirement plans or pension plans. What advice, what wisdom, what key takeaways do you have for this audience?
Sure. The key takeaways that I would say, if you get nothing more from this conversation, is that make sure that you're really staying on top of the drafting of the Quadro, making sure that you really understand your ex-spouse's employers, how many employers that they've had during the marriage, because you'll need to make sure that if you're going to be awarded a portion of it, that you have all of the pertinent information. And then also, even for yourself, make sure that you understand that this is a property right that can be negotiated with. And so there are some times when you can actually, decide to retain all of your retirement benefits because they're important. Some people can have substantive retirement benefits, especially with the 401ks. And so if that's something that you're not willing to give up, be a little flexible and maybe give on some other items that are not as valuable and things like that. And then also make sure that you're really thinking about this ahead of time. You want to make sure that you're getting ahead of it, and try to make sure that even though a judge signs it, you really remember that that doesn't always mean that the Quadro is valid. The plan administrator has the last word, and so that is the person that you would have to make sure that gives the final approval. So having a judge's signature means nothing if the plan administrator does not qualify the DRO.
Okay. How will you know if the plan administrator doesn't qualify it?
They'll send a letter.
They'll send a letter.
They'll send a letter to the parties. So the alternate payee or the ex-spouse will receive the letter, and then also the spouse. And they give you a chance to cure it, right? Any reasons for rejection, they'll spell out like these are the reasons why it was rejected. And like I said, sometimes it's something small as you didn't put the right social security number down, or you're missing the date of birth, or things like that, or you didn't provide a copy of the divorce decree. So they have really tiny reasons why it could be rejected, or it could be rejected, like I said, because of, something much bigger. But, you want to make sure that you have, that you spend the money to have a Quadro drafted by somebody who has knowledge of Quadros. Family law attorneys don't necessarily have it, and they're always saying that, hey, I don't do this, and so here's someone else that actually does it. This is the person I'm going to recommend to draft it. So, but it'll cost a little extra money up front to get it done, but it'll be worth it, especially if you stand to gain a lot from an ex-spouse. And then also make sure that you're protecting yourselves. If you're the one that has the more money, then make sure that you're protecting yourself. Make sure that you know what's going on, and like you said, Tasha, I don't want, this person to have to, wait on, I don't want to have to wait until they retire before I can start withdrawing my benefits. So make sure that that's being stipulated in the Quadro.
Okay. All right. So we did get one question, Attorney Rena. Is there a certain length of time of marriage for this benefit? And I think you told us earlier that there really isn't. Whatever amount of time that you're married, that constitutes the marital interest. And so if you're married for 4 or 5 years, then your portion, the ex-spouses or the other spouse who doesn't have the plan under their name then qualifies for that period of time for which you were married.
That's correct. It's not like alimony where you have to be married for a certain length of time in order to receive alimony. So Quadro is completely different set of laws, and under the law, doesn't matter the length of time that you're married, you get a marital portion of your you have a right to a marital portion of the benefit, and that usually comes for the duration of the marriage. So if you have, you've been married for a year, then you get 50% of what was accumulated. That's the normal. 50% is normal. You can negotiate higher or lower. But it's whatever was accrued during the marriage is the portion of the benefit that that person would receive.
Okay, so a couple of things to take away, as Attorney Rena already talked about. There are a couple of things I want to make sure that you heard and you consider. Number one, the law says that that spouse who doesn't carry the plan is entitled. So there's not much you can do about changing that law, and but you can decide to negotiate away other things. If you want to keep your retirement whole or your pension whole, you can decide to negotiate on something else. What I heard her say is it is so very important to make sure that you have a person who does Quadros. If you're in a situation that you have to have one drafted because you're splitting part of your retirement or part of your pension plan, you have to have someone who is versed in doing this. It is an attorney who takes care of it. Typically, it is not your divorce attorney in most cases. So someone like Attorney Rena, who is experienced at this, who does this all the time, that's who you need working on a plan like this for you. And it is imperative that you understand what the plan contains and you pay attention to the language, because it matters a lot. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're hitting right at 9 o'clock. Attorney Rena Felton, thank you so much for sharing the information that you've shared. I appreciate those of you for hanging in there with us through the technical difficulties today. And I want you to know that if you are going through divorce, you can be better on the other side. Thanks for joining us, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Thanks for having me, Tasha.
Appreciate you.
I wanna take you to